Hello, Guru Nation. Welcome back. This is going to be a super important, super exciting, and it's something that's missing in our industry is actual conversation and dialogue around real issues. We're not talking about academic things you can find from a book or good clinical practice framework that you can get trained on and get a certificate. This is real stuff, practical stuff. How to use, in this case, ClinicalTrials.gov, what it's for, what it's really for. We all know it's for patients, but then how sites use it. And I have two guests on. Robert Goldman, the first guest, he's a study director from a biotech company. He has decades of experience in this industry from the sponsor CRO side. Amongst many things is site selection, one of the main things that he does. And then I have Rod Raphael from Investigators Research Group in Indianapolis, Indiana, who both guests have been on many times. They've never been on together. So I'm really happy to get both of you guys on at the same time. And we're just going to riff and go back and forth on this topic. It's interesting. Maybe we'll all learn something, myself included. All of us, we could pick up a thing or two, help us communicate better, work better in the industry. At the end of the day, we're all stakeholders going for the same outcomes, right? Before we get into that, for sites, all right, you got to digitize your e-regulatory, your investigator site file. Viva, thank you, Viva, for being the sponsor of the show. Viva's got absolutely free, no contract required electronic investigator site file. So you can, I know most sites still haven't switched to anything. They're still using paper. You can actually digitize your electronic regulatory. Not only is it easier for remote monitoring and all that, but the way Viva has it, because Viva partners with over 450 sponsors that are already using Viva for all their stuff, it's passive. So you put something in there, you share it with the sponsors that you allow to share it with, meaning the ones you have studies with, and they'll know when your ISF has been updated. So no more emails from monitors saying, where's this log? Where's that log? None of that stuff. Plus, to add, I guess, cherry on top, right? Sites, when you join this thing for free, Viva Site Vault, you get added to the list where Viva shares your info with sponsors, because this is kind of biz dev talk that we're going to get into. So that's another way to do it. So thank you, Viva, for sponsoring the podcast. And thank you to both guests, Robert and Rod. Let's get into it, guys. Thank you both for coming on.
Always a pleasure, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Dan.
So let's start with Robert first, because Robert, thank you for this topic. Robert's a study director. Robert is somebody who everybody should follow. Same with Rod. By the way, both of their LinkedIns will be underneath this video. And if you're listening in the show notes, Robert posted something on LinkedIn today that I kind of read as I was leaving. And then I was like, oh man, this would be great to like actually do a podcast on, because Robert's from the unique position of sponsor side, and people like myself and Rod, we're on the site side. So we're in charge of getting studies for our sites, helping our clients get studies for themselves. A lot of them are new, but sites like myself and Rod, we've been doing this for a while. So we all know ClinicalTrials.gov is not meant to be a business development tool. You're not going to get the argument from me. I'm the first one to say it. Matter of fact, on my videos where I teach sites how to use ClinicalTrials.gov to find studies. So Robert, you might hate me after that video. But we'll get into some nuances. I tell them this is not for getting studies. So keep in mind, like, your response rate's not going to be that high. 90% of the time I send somebody a blind message from ClinicalTrials.gov, I don't hear back. But we do it for that 5 to 10% of the time because it does work. And we'll get into some of the nuances, what you should send. I tend to send just a paragraph, no attachments, because when you send attachments, it goes to spams most of the time. So just a paragraph. This is what we do. This is our value prop. I would love it. And I'll actually read live on the air one that I sent last week just to see. But thank you, Robert, for bringing up this topic. I guess we'll start with you, because this is a pain point of yours, actually, and you've mentioned it a few times.
Yeah, listen, Dan, we've actually talked about this before a while ago. We touched on it lightly, but I come back from Thanksgiving to the computer, I launch it up, and I must have had 2 dozen, sending them on Thanksgiving, on Friday after Thanksgiving, all the way through the end of the week, of study inquiry requests. And this happens daily, right? We've talked about this actually. When you and I were in person, when I was at your site,
Mhm.
when we were talking, I was like, Dad, I get hundreds a month. And you're like, hundreds?
I didn't
Like
believe it was hundreds a month. That's crazy.
hundreds.
And you're a
And
small biotech. You're
and
not
we're
like a big one
yeah,
like Pfizer.
exactly. We're a small biotech. And I think that's the problem because a lot of the contact information for large biotech is exactly like Brad mentioned on the post. If I see clinical trials at whatever company, .com, he's more like less likely to actually reach out to that because he knows it's just going to fall into a box with 100 other requests. Unfortunately, with mine, I'm listed as the primary point of contact for the study. And the reason I don't want to change it is because, I have had over a dozen patients in the past year. It's not a huge return, but I actually take the time out of my day to put in the site name, the investigator name, the main study contact at that site, email, phone number. So it makes it easier for patients to actually participate because they do go on the site for the right reasons. And from my perspective. So I want them to benefit from the actual intended use of the site. The opposite side of that is all of these vendors and prospective sites who are breaking in the industry, whether they have a track record, whether they don't, I don't know, but they reach out. And I think Brad nailed it in my post. It's really the tone in which they reach out to you. It's like a demand. Hey, I'm so and so. We have this many investigators. They tout, that some of them will send over them, an informational sheet. We have X amount of years. We have this database. We have this centrifuge. We have this freezer. We do or do not have PK experience. We have this phase through this phase through this phase. We have dedicated coordinators, dedicated recruitment, and it sounds phenomenal, right? I mean, it's a great infrastructure, but then I'm thinking to myself, if you have this type of infrastructure, why are you reaching out and running your leads this way? If you have high quality and you have this type of infrastructure, repeat business, I mean, Rod can probably touch on this, is a sure thing in a sense, right? You have a good relationship with a sponsor. I'm going to award you study after study after study as long as you're willing to, you have the patient population, you're willing to work with us, right?
It,
So it's a double. I mean, I don't understand, and again, not to keep saying what Brad said on my post, but it just goes to show the measures in which sites are taking to win business. And quite frankly, it's not. I don't have any confidence in these type of sites. I would never in a million years entertain them. And I don't mean to say that in a rude way because I've been burned, by selecting sites that the CRO doesn't have experience with, that we don't have experience with, that don't have a proven track record of success. Now, a proven track record of success doesn't mean anything these days because I'm working with a lot of sites who 10 years ago were phenomenal in the pain space and now they're not showing up to the ball game. You know what I mean? So these things happen, but at the end of the day, it's alarming to see the misuse of the intended use. That's a tongue twister of ClinicalTrials.gov from my perspective. Again, this is just my opinion, and being on the receiving end of these countless amounts of emails, I like to be respectable. And I like to take time out of my day to at least acknowledge and respond because that's the right thing to do. We're a small company. And as we grow and develop our pipeline, maybe we will work with one of these sites by proxy one day. I don't know. So I never want to burn a bridge. We're a small industry, as we always say, right? We always want to leave a good taste in each other's mouths and do this and do that and make sure that we're doing the right thing. So I give the courtesy of a response, And maybe that's to my downfall, is I should probably, like some people are commenting, mark it spam. Well, if I'm marking it spam, that's just one address that's going to come, but I have CEOs of sites constantly. They'll send 3-4 emails in a week and it's the same email. They just don't even realize that they're spamming and spraying the same email to the same person. And again, just to wrap it up, and I'll pass it to you and Rod for your perspective, it's the tone of the email. It's the demand. Send us a CDA. I'm requesting a CDA. What day works for you next week to discuss? Like, you don't think I've got a zillion and one things going on over here that I just
day next week?
Yeah.
Guys, what the heck is wrong with you guys if you're sending these kind of emails?
Did you get my email?
I think I missed yours, Rod.
Probably not. Probably got one.
This is crazy. Okay, so you're right. You have a lot of good points. Okay. I guess before we get into me and Rod's take, is there any kind of email that would possibly work for you to receive?
I'm sure there. So, yeah.
Asking for everyone watching.
Here's the. So I think I want to address your question, but let's talk about ClinicalTrials.gov and what the statuses actually mean, right? Because this is a big thing, and because the answer to your question, Dan, is yes, there is an email that would probably catch my attention, but 99.9% of them don't fall into this category for the following reason. Tone is number one. Number two is the overall recruitment status. So when you go on clinicaltrials.gov and you're looking at interventional studies and you're looking it up by indication, geographic region, start date, phase, whatever, there's a status of the study. And I'm reading this right now from the sponsor end of the clinicaltrials.gov. There are 8 statuses, okay? And they are not yet recruiting. So that's when you get, study may proceed, you're in the startup phase, you're doing site selection, you're doing budget contract negotiation. And we have our study listed on clinicaltrials.gov, which is by regulation, we have to, especially after the end of a phase 2 meeting, you get permission to proceed to phase 3, for example. You list your study. It's, the same NCT number, the same IND number, and you list it, and you would put the status not yet recruiting. Folks, this is about patients, not sites. Recruiting patients, not sites. Then the next status is recruiting. When you have your FPI slated and you've been, you're ready to turn on the light switch, now we're recruiting. Again, we're recruiting patients, not sites. Okay. The next status is enrolling by invitation. Active, not recruiting. Active, that's when the site has closed screening and enrollment. They've met their milestones. Now the study's in maintenance. Then the next status is completed, followed by suspended, followed by terminated, followed by withdrawn. So as you can see, recruiting means that we're recruiting subjects. I can't say that enough, because again, 99.9% of those emails, Dan says, I see you're recruiting on clinicaltrials.gov for, clinical trial NCT ... And, I try to be very nice in my response, and I'm like, well, this is in referral to subjects, not sites. We're actually fully committed, but we'll retain your information and we'll reach out if, additional sites are needed. So I think number one, understanding the actual recruitment status and what it means if you're trying to win a study, that's number one. And number two, I don't think there's anywhere that any sponsor is, by some regulation, obligated to go under a CDA with a prospective site. That's just not how this process works during feasibility.
Right.
I only go under a CDA if I, conduct a preliminary feasibility assessment, and that's where we get to that point in the process, right? So I think it's a culmination of all that, Dan. And if the email is worded in a manner of, hey, on this site, like you mentioned, here's my prop value. Here's what I have to offer. Here's how long we've been in the industry. We have a proven track record. We worked with these type of sponsors, that's what I'm looking for. But the folks that send over, hi, we are so-and-so, we're located here. We have a rich database. we think that we could be fit. These doctors are really interested in your study. Please send a CDA at your earliest convenience and let me know what day next week you have available to discuss the study. I'll leave it at that.
All right. Yeah. So basically, don't be entitled when you write these things. To push back, well, you're absolutely right with, like, I can't stand people from any context sending email that's entitled. I get those too. Not to give them a study, but more to like, hey, let's schedule a call when convenient for you. It's like, it's never convenient for me. I get what you're saying. There are some people I will respond to and others I won't. And generally, I agree with you. It's based on tone and degree of entitlement that exudes from what I'm reading. 100% agree. All right. So with that being said, if you don't send an entitled email, and I want Rod's take on this too. Like, let me just send you, I pulled randomly, Robert, an email I sent right before Thanksgiving for an obesity study. I don't know if we're going to get it. Here's all I said. My name is Dan Sfera. I run UMA's only multi-therapeutic site. Our PI is UMA's largest independent private practice and treats a large and diverse group of obese patients, most of whom are research naive. We would be very interested in participating in this trial. If additional sites are needed, I would be happy to send a CDA and feasibility ASAP. That's it. That's all I said. That's usually what I
Tell you
do.
what, I don't put much more than that if I send one out either. I'll tell you what mine typically says. Let me find it though.
What do you think,
What?
Robert, about this?
No, I just said the key word there was if you're looking for site. See, that way I can benevolently reply to you, Mr. Sfera, thank you so much for reaching out. At this time, we either are or are not looking for additional sites. However, we will retain your information for future consideration. When the time presents itself, I'll reach back out so we can do a formal introduction. And if we, both mutually see fit, we can go under a CDA if the shoe fits, if you will, right?
Mhm.
I mean, the key word there, Dan, is if. You didn't say
if.
You are, we are looking to do this and send me the CDA, like you're expecting them to respond to you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And what sites need to understand, and not to keep beating this to a dead horse, but there are hundreds of these emails coming in on a weekly basis, hundreds. So my big thing is, and I'm not disparaging the tactic, a little bit I am, but not really, right? Because again, I'm in the school of thought where, look, if you're an established site and you have a good track record with the CROs, they're going to continuously award you studies.
Absolutely.
And Dad, just to piggyback off of your Viva thing, right? If you're part of an organization using Viva and you're on that list, right? And I get that list, I'm going, or whether it's from an IRB or if it's from a CRO or if it's from Viva, like these are trusted sources. You're shooting it, you're throwing an arrow at the wall, hoping it sticks in the middle of the board. And most of the time, I have to tell you, without some good feasibility or a recommendation from somebody, whether it's internally, externally, whether it's from a current vendor, whether it's from a CRO partner, I'm not going to just gamble on what a site's telling me. And the reason for that is I've been burned as recently as 6 months ago. I was promised the world. And the site owner was willing to put verbiage in the CTA that I've never even heard of before, but legal came back and said, no, Robert, we can't do that. But the point is, I was like, oh, he's willing to sign it. Maybe he knew something I didn't know really at the time, that like, oh, he'll never get away with putting this type of verbiage clause in the CTA. But the fact is he was willing to sign it and put it in there. So I'm like, what do I have to lose? Long story short, I lost a lot on that one. It was a huge dent.
Rod, what's your
It's
take
always-
on all this, man?
I was going to say it's always tough to know what sites, unless you've worked with them or they have a track record that you can look at. So my email typically just says, hello, we are a 16-year-old research clinic in the suburbs of Indianapolis. Our research site would be very interested in knowing more about your study. If you're looking for additional sites or patients, I look forward to hearing back from you. Have a good day. But you're right. I mean, that is a shot in the dark. The real problem is most sites don't know where to look for studies, even with the sponsors they're working with. They don't know how to get a hold of those studies in certain indications. You know, you might be doing an indication in NASH, but you want to do a weight loss study in that with that same company. How do you get to that company? Because I know once it's on ClinicalTrials.gov, it's too late usually. You've already picked your sites. So where
That's
does
a
the site get?
If it wasn't
One
for
good way
rescue
would be
sites,
Vivo.
there's always hope. There's always hope.
No, but Rod, that's a great point, and I think that's a solution and a problem that, hopefully there's some tech people watching this video and that they can, this is a problem that we need a solution to, right? ClinicalTrials.gov is antiquated. Yeah, they're pushing out the beta version. They're trying to make it more modern. But you're absolutely. I have empathy for you, and I understand. Like, where else do you turn? How are you in the know of upcoming work? And honestly, I think that has a lot to do with the CROs. They're aware of their back to book bill ratio. They've been awarded $1.5 billion of work that hasn't even started yet. They know what studies are in the pipeline. So, I'm not sure the answer to that, but I think something needs to be made, and we need to have more dialogue with people in our industry to develop something that gives sites the intelligence on what's coming up Q1 of 2023, Q2 of 2023, and so forth, so that you have an awareness of it versus, taking a shot in the dark that 9 times out of 10, isn't going to yield you any fruit. And Dan, I hate to liken this, but it's kind of like that recruitment discussion we had, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you spray out 1,000 emails and you get 5 responders, people are going to continue this behavior because it's working, right?
What I'm trying to do when I send mine. So first of all, like, I completely agree with you, like with the tone and being entitled. That's not a good thing. Also, another thing I hate, people send like paragraphs with attachments. Nobody's gonna read that, guys. That belongs on Kindle. You can sell it on Kindle, 99 cents. Maybe someone buys it. No one's gonna read this email. What I'm hoping for. So there's a couple things. When I really want a study, so that example of one I just read, it's not really one I really want. It's a shot in the dark. I'm hoping I could get it. It was a small enough company to where I think that contact, I could find other people if I want to follow up using LinkedIn. I think that's a more appropriate way. Actual research the company a little bit. When I really want to study, I will do that and talk a little more, I guess, sophisticated about the company and our role, our context. But really, like Rod said, it's a shot in the dark. I mean, I'm hoping for either a rescue site that's needed, if I really have that indication. And I'm hoping that 1 out of those 10 that I send will say, you know what? Yeah, well, here's the CDA. I mean, we actually are looking in Yuma or Indianapolis. It's a good location. We don't have too many sites there.
Let me give you some advice and I think it would take a little bit. And again, I want your feedback, Dan, Rod. I think from my perspective, the worst, there's 2 things that happen. Number one is if I'm running a pain study, let's just call it that, and you tell me that you have board certified physicians in cardiology, gastroenterology, that doesn't help me. Like, why are you reaching out for a study that clearly says, treat using this compound to treat this pain, right? Like,
Yeah.
this has nothing to do with it. So that's one thing that's like a big misnomer. And I know why that's a spray and spam. The other part is if you are an actual analgesic interventional pain facility, you have doctors who are in this specialty, right? Put some metrics behind. In the previous studies in this space, we've enrolled X amount of patients. We've screened this amount of patients. We were the top enroller. We were the middle enroller. We exceeded or met our site recruitment plan, expectations. We continuously put some metrics behind that, because then I'm like, wow, this is actually a pain site. This is actually, they've done X amount of studies within the past 5 years. They've met their, like, that would intrigue me more than just seeing about, if you have experience in this indication. If you've never done a study with, then we get on the phone and I find out you've never done a study in the past 2.5 years through the COVID pandemic. I'm not gonna, this is not the right thing for me. Because at the end of the day, I'm responsible for the delivery to my executive management team, and I'm working within an operational budget. We're an investor funded company. So, this is not like we have approved products. I mean, you have to be very careful with the funding, and you select the wrong site, that's a $60,000 mistake, right? Startup fees,
Yeah.
trial retention fees, closeout fees, pharmacy startup fee. That can really add up, So you do that 5 times, Dan, that's 300 grand, and some budgets are higher, some budgets are lower. So I'm just saying it can really prove to be a costly mistake. And that's why, sponsors, I don't care, large, big, or small, they're a little bit gun shy, and as they should be, because where's your metrics? So put some metrics in those emails. I think that would be really helpful. What are your thoughts?
No, I think that's great. Like when we actually do have experience in an indication and I have the time, I'll throw some metrics in there, even if they're approximations. I'll throw
Yeah.
it in there. And now we have eSource, so I could easily go see, okay, past study, this is what we have. But Rod, why do we do this? As
Why
site
do we
owners,
do
why do we send emails?
ClinicalTrials.gov and that shot in the dark? And well, it goes back to what we were saying. I mean, sites don't necessarily, unless they have a way of, if they have somebody, a representative, a monitor, a physician that they know that works with the sponsor, then they can go to the sponsor and say, look, we've done XYZ and we want to continue doing XYZ studies with you. But those people are very difficult to find, let alone find the person after you've started the study from the sponsor to talk to about the study.
But
So
you're an established site, right? Like
I
my
am,
site,
but
Yuma Clinical Trial, it's only been around a little over a year. So yeah, I mean, there's still ROI for me to do it. And I'll actually never stop if I really want the study to use this strategy. I'll probably incorporate more of what Robert's been saying. But like if you've been doing it for 18 years, right, with your site, like there's still value in doing this, right?
yeah, I mean, we've been doing it for 16 years and we still, because well, for example, NASH, there were no NASH studies 5 years ago. So that's one that we went after. Now, grant you, in retrospect, I'm thinking about it, I believe we've worked with that sponsor, but it's so hard to get to those other indications, even within the sponsor, because it doesn't feel like they keep good metrics on the sites. So if I'm looking for a NASH study with Merck, for example, let's just say, and I've done a different study with Merck, those people within the study don't know anything about the NASH study or that team and who to talk to. So the site's kind of at a loss, and then that's when you hear about this study or you see it on ClinicalTrials.gov. A lot of sites will try to, I'm going to say this, a lot of sites will network with other sites and try to find out, do you know about this study? If they haven't heard about it, because this might be an indication they're trying to get into.
And there's actually sites like experience sites that share these leads with others. So
No.
if there's like people who would email Robert, it's not always because of ClinicalTrials.gov. It might be other sites that are sharing your info with those sites. Now, sometimes it's obvious it's from ClinicalTrials.gov when they put the NCT number, you could tell, or they they say like you said, hey, I saw this on ClinicalTrials.gov, but other times it's a colleague. So how do you respond, Robert, when it's a colleague of mine suggested that I should contact you because perhaps you're in need of rescue sites?
A whole lot different.
That's
It's a
better.
whole, yeah, it's exponentially better. You know, again, it all comes back to that trust factor, you know. Whether or not you're a current site, whether or not you are a former site, the fact that it's a referral, you know, it just holds a lot more. I mean, it just provides a little bit more comfort to me to explore the opportunity with them. And if it's not a current opportunity, maybe it's a future opportunity. But I think you're right, Dan. I mean, more sites need to link with each other, share leads, but I feel like, you know, that there's a little bit of a competition on the site level, and it's kind of like a physician giving their patient off to your PI, Dan, you know, for his study. Now he loses that patient. So, you know, it's you know, is that site you're going to give, you know, the lead to going to perform better than you, and now the sponsors are going to use that site and no longer you. So I just feel like there's a little bit of that, you know, competition in the background that's preventing sites from really having this dialogue that's needed. I don't think there's any harm in that, because look, Dan, if you're a trusted site and you tell me Rod's phenomenal, I'm gonna call up Rod and I'm gonna do like a verbal feasibility, and then I'll direct the CRO to either execute a CDA or not, and then we'll send the synopsis over immediately, and you know, then Rod will say whether or not he, you know, thinks this is a good fit. Reputation in this industry is everything, I think, you know. And so I mean, if he doesn't show up or he does show up for the site, I mean, it's, you know, for the study, at least the recommendation came from a reputable source that I trust, versus just, you know, hey, I'm so and so and here's all my promises, and you know, there's no way to gauge what the ROI on that statement is going to be until I give them a shot. Now, I'm the first one to say I have given those shots in the dark. I have brought on sites where I've had no working relationship with them. The CROs had no working relationship with them. And I've been burned 100% of the time. So, you know, yes, referrals from trusted sources is great.
I will say one thing that I think is more, I don't believe it, but in the fact that physicians should not feel like they're going to lose that patient if they refer them, because we don't want to keep that patient for anything other than a research study. We're not treating them. We're not prescribing them. Now, are there sites that do that? Maybe there is, but most of my 16 years, I don't know of sites that steal research patients and then put them in their practice. Having said that, I can't say it's not done. Now, the other thing I was going to say, if I can, gosh, I hope I remember these. I had 3 points I was going to make. That was the one. Oh, the other about sites. It's gone. I'm sorry. I don't remember what the other 2 points were. It'll come back to me.
That's okay. As far as the patients, you know, most of the doctors I work with, they don't want more patients. They want more research patients. They don't want more private practice patients.
Right. But Dan, what I'm trying to say, and Rod, and I agree with you guys, but what I'm saying is even that acute loss for that specific indication, you know, maybe it's going to last 6 months, maybe it's going to last a year, maybe it's 3 months. It's still a dent in the revenue clinic stream. I'm not saying this is widespread, but there is a misconception to why providers don't offer studies as an alternative viable treatment option to patients, whether it's their lack of understanding of how it works, whether it's, you know, the reason I just mentioned, or it's another reason we haven't mentioned. I think there's a little bit of disconnect between what Rod and you have said. You know, you don't have an intention on retaining this patient, and the PI doesn't have any intention on retaining this patient in their private practice to continue to treat this, you know, the disease under study. It's a temporary thing, but that temporary thing is still an acute loss from a revenue perspective. And I think that's where the missing link is, where they may or may not understand that. And so, I'm all about making sure that patients have access. They at least have a choice to be made. Do you want to do this? And most of them aren't even aware that this is a viable treatment option. Before I went to the sponsor side, I was doing a Parkinson's study. And let's just say it's one of the, top 3 academic institutions of higher learning in the country that people travel all over the world to come get treatment at this particular place. And I was doing de novo Parkinson's patients, newly diagnosed. It was a combination therapy that was more effective together than it was on monotherapy. And, I would call up the PI and ask him, hey, what's going on with recruitment? He's like, Robert, I forgot. I saw a de novo patient. I just forgot. Well, that's okay. You forgot, but are you doing a disservice to the patient by forgetting that it was an actual potentially safer, potentially more efficacious option for their newly diagnosed situation that they're very worried about? Instead, the knee jerk was just to start treatment on, reseduline, which is a very commonly prescribed drug for de novo diagnosed patients in Parkinson's. So, the question begs to be answered is it a disservice to the patient? Maybe. And that's what I'm trying to say, right? It's nothing more than that. It's just they forgot, or it's just not on the top of their mind because they're just not, recalling this as a viable option treatment. But I mean, I don't mean to digress from the topic of the discussion here, but I'm not worried about patients and doctors, keeping. I'm just talking about why are sites not communicating with
No,
one
fair
another.
enough. Fair enough.
No.
Well, I know that Dan and I, and we have a good amount of sites that we communicate with on a regular basis. So,
Oh yeah, we send study leads all the time.
yeah.
I have a service that sends study leads to clients across the country. Matter of fact, one of the things I started teaching clients is how to integrate LinkedIn with ClinicalTrials.gov and it works better for small companies like yours, Robert. Actually, like if you really want a study, you're not going to go after like Pfizer. Using LinkedIn, you're going to find thousands of people on there. I mean, the algorithm tries to show you who you think who's most likely to reply, like who you're more likely connected to, and the algorithm's smarter than we are, guys. But like when it's a small company and you get a lead, let's say from ClinicalTrials.gov, and then you go on, maybe you find Robert, but then you go on LinkedIn and you type that same company on there, you might see Robert and a few other people, right? So now if it's a study you really want, you could reach out to all 3, all 4, however many there are, but come at it from a different perspective, like really study what their role is in the study. All right, figure out like, okay, this person's in charge, I think, of feasibility. This person's the CEO, but it doesn't hurt to reach out to all of them with LinkedIn. And especially when you've done
Essentially, Dan,
your due diligence.
essentially, we're still doing the same thing now. We're
Yeah.
sending emails
Mhm.
to these people we haven't met yet, or maybe we have on LinkedIn. The real problem is that study sites don't know where to look for studies.
Yeah. That
And I mean,
is the real problem.
And then the problem for us as sponsor, at least on my, on the sponsor side is now you found the study. How do I gauge, validate you, and what's the trust score exactly?
But
So it's
you know what, to play devil's advocate, like sites don't know where to look. Let's pretend like there was a list, like a magical list where any site that wanted a study can go there and any sponsor that wanted a site can go there. Right? I suspect it would be so efficient that the barrier to entry would be extremely difficult for new sites to get studies because it would just be a closed system. And so this actually incentivizes sites to say, hey, you know what? Because there isn't something like this utopia, I'm just going to send 10 more emails today before I leave the office because I know if I'm doing it, my competitor's not. That's not to say they need to be entitled when they write it and all that, but the lack of this, Rod, is actually, it's an opportunity for sites that are willing to work a little harder and give them a chance to get experience.
Robert's telling you it's a shot in the dark that
Mhm.
that he may even respond. So we're spending however much time. Like I always go through ClinicalTrials.gov because I might have missed a study. I may, maybe I didn't get contacted. But they're there, and it's usually at that point you've already selected your sites. So it's if you need a backup or or something down the road changes where you might want another site. But again, for some of these small sites that haven't been doing this for a long time, that's what they end up doing. And even if it is a site like myself, like we went through a period where we did a ton of diabetic studies. Well, those aren't there now, like for us, like they were in the past. We've moved on to, another set of type of studies. And yes, we do get referrals from those companies. What ends up happening typically in the real world of sites is you might get like we had an IBS study. We worked with 2 or 3 companies. It went from a phase 1B, 2A, 3, phase 3, and then we were done and never really got much of anything else from them because that team was only working on IBS. And then I assume the team gets disbanded and they go to different indications. So, and a lot of those people aren't the people that make the decisions on who the next site will be for that next indication that they're working on. So it's not always feasible that we get to continue with one sponsor because there isn't a go-to person is really what it boils down to for that sponsor. Or if there is, they don't last in that job very long. It doesn't feel like they might be a territorial physician that does, what am I trying to say, Dan? The physicians that do the, they're like they're not a drug rep, but they're the monitors that, or they're the
medical
CSOs.
liaison.
Yeah,
yes,
medical science
the physician liaison.
Yeah.
But those people are far and few between and hard to find for the
Man,
sites.
my PI just got us a good one. I might share it with you, Rod, once they do the
You
SSV.
might see.
Yeah, no. They're doing the SSV. They're doing the SSV.
Okay, well, hold on. That was the point I was going to make before. Is sites shouldn't be if Dan's in Yuma, Arizona, I'm in Indianapolis. We shouldn't be afraid to share leads with each other.
No, absolutely.
We're not going to compete with each other.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, absolutely not. I might
even if you want a diverse type of study, you're going to get a different ethnic group than I am in Indianapolis
always
for diversity.
Regions, especially, I mean, even when there's sites in Arizona, I share the study leads. What I said by I might, this is a study the PI got through his medical science liaison. So it's actually his contact coming in. So before I like screw it up for him, I'm going to actually ask this lady, this is like the right way to do it. I'm going to ask this lady when she comes to our site, hey, I know a few other sites if you're interested. They usually, when you ask them that, they always say yes. Always.
Yes.
Always. I remember when Robert came, I asked him the same thing. When Robert came to my site, I said, hey, and I think I might have sent you that one too, Rod. Actually, I'm pretty sure I did. But I think the window was we were a rescue site, but for this new one that my PI got, it's a brand new. They're not planning until June. So I know we have time, and I'm gonna actually ask her the right way, like, hey, can I send you a few sites that I'm connected with? 95% of the time they say yes. That's why I said might. There's a 5% that she says no, but I doubt it.
I'm going to ask both of you a question. It's kind of off the subject. We're doing Zoom here, and most of the meetings are done by Zoom now, virtually, the investigator meetings. My opinion is, yes, you're saving a lot of money doing it this way, but you're not getting the quality that you would get from the sites if they were doing an actual in-person investigator meeting. I think in the long run, these sponsors are going to find out they would have been better off doing in-person meetings. That's my little rant for today, though.
Yeah, there have been about 50-50. This one that's coming for the study starting in June, it's in person. But I just had one where we're a rescue site. Both the SSV and the SIV were virtual. So
I don't mind those. I mind the investigator meeting being that way. I feel like as a
Oh,
site, we learn so much more if we're actually there
that's true.
doing.
You know what it is, Rod? You have, a long tenure of experience, so you know the benefit of in-person versus virtual. If you pull 60 sites as a sponsor and say, hey, how many of you are willing to travel to an investigator meeting? 80% are going to say no.
Yeah,
you
my
know
PI says no.
so I
I
mean,
told him
there you
even
go.
if it's in Paris, I said sometimes they're in Paris, France, sometimes they're in Rome, Italy. He said, especially if they're that far.
So, I agree wholeheartedly that the benefit of in person, the connection, the training, the breakout sessions, it's night and day. The return on the investment is, and I don't really think it's not because we're not willing to invest in an in-person meeting. It's pulling the sites and asking who's willing to go, because again, we're not going to have an in-person investigator meeting if 20% of our active sites are going to show up,
Well, you know
right?
who ends up going is people like me and Rod.
Well,
And
which
then
is
we share
fine.
with all the rest of our colleagues, like, hey,
We want to
we
Yeah.
might
network.
need add-on sites. Our PI, like my PIs doesn't want to go to those things. Even for this one that he got us, like he actually got the one that I said, Rod, I might send it to you. He actually got this study to us. First time ever, by the way, a PI got me a study through their MSL. Like usually I'm the one saying, hey, MSL. I asked the sales reps. He did it. He's like, call this lady. I met her today. She's the MSL. They have a study starting in June. So then that's who, even this study that he's never been more excited about a study in his life, he wouldn't go to the investigator meeting. He's too busy. He's got, and isn't that like the catch 22 as a sponsor? You need the physicians that are busy, that have a busy private practice. Like that's actually good for you because you're not relying on these stupid central recruiters that don't do anything. I'm gonna
Mhm.
keep it clean for Viva, all right? Versus the PIs that actually treat patients in their office as well. So, but the catch 22 is those same guys and gals, they don't have time to take 3 days out of their day to go fly somewhere. That's like
I think you
60
can get
patients they
to,
could have seen.
Yeah, no, that's part of it. You're right. It is a catch 22, but I think the value that Rod mentioned is, you just can't replace that over a Zoom.
No, you
And
can't.
I wanted to add another thing,
No
in
one pays
terms of
attention
just,
either on Zoom.
well, and that's the thing too, they've introduced these polls and, click here, click there, enter your comment, and they've got all these like cool, different things like to make it interactive, but it doesn't replace that in-person connection, right? Where you're sitting at a table and you're talking and, one person hears a question. One thing I wanted to say, no matter how large of a phase 3 study, a phase 2 study, whatever, phase 4 post-market surveillance study, you know, yes, sponsors will come with 20, 30 sites. And as a sponsor, if we want to chase down 50 sites for a pivotal phase 3 study, we have to approach 150. It's a 3-to-1 ratio, right? So my point in saying that is it's, sometimes sponsors will come, because remember, I have a lot of CRO experience too. So when I was working as a CTM, project manager, startup lead, on the CRO side, large sponsors, large ones, huge ones would come to us, and literally I would look at their site list and it's 20 sites, 30 sites, that they would really like to use. And we of course approach these sites, and it's the same 3-to-1, shot. You're going to get 10, less than 10 of those 30 sites who are willing to participate.
Yep.
And then you lean on your CRO to provide the other sites based on historical performance. So I think the model of looking for sites has to change a little bit, because how do you get those sites that could be super well qualified, phenomenal work, but they just don't have that track record yet, right? They have experienced CRCs. They hired a CRC with 20 years of experience. They've got dedicated staffs. They got dedicated phlebotomy. They have on-site imaging. They have all these fancy, parts of their site that make them a phenomenal infrastructure. But then as a sponsor, I'm contracting out this startup feasibility to the CRO, and I'm depending on them to identify the sites.
Those damn CROs.
So it's like they're always, they're kind of in the middle there. So I mean,
And at
I
the end of the
hear
day, they need to be able to recruit, is really what it boils down to.
Yeah, can you get
exactly.
patients or not? But isn't that, like you just said, okay, for like, let's say you need 50 sites, you need 150 to explore.
Mhm.
So isn't there a window, and this is the thing, nobody knows when that window is for each individual, but isn't there a window where your inbox is more receptive to these kind of messages if they're not like written by someone who's entitled and demanding?
I mean, yeah, but Dan, like in the reality here, like I'm just going to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
What happens is I take that referral, that person who emails me, and I forward it to the study startup lead at the CRO, and I go, hey, here's a site that's interested in the study. Now, what they do with that information, I don't know.
Okay.
Do they act on it? Do they actually send out a feasibility
got you.
questionnaire? And then they'll come back to me. And quite honestly, I don't keep track of, what site to and that. And, oh, this site, yeah, well, yeah, I referred this site to you. And now Robert, is it okay if we execute a CDA? I'm like, sure, go ahead. I look at their, site feasibility
enough.
questionnaire. So it's very challenging because, I get that information and all I can do with it is send it over. Unless it's like a site where I have firsthand experience, I monitored there once upon a time.
No, fair
I
enough,
I know the PI, and I'm like, let's go ahead to CDA with this site.
I'd
But
be doing
typically,
the
I wouldn't
same
do
thing.
that. Yeah.
I'm known as the king of forwards, and I'd be forwarding, abusing the hell out of that forward button.
Once I know you've read it, I send another one.
But okay, okay, yeah, exactly. Robert, last thing, I guess. Unless Rod has something else too, or unless Rod, did you think of those two other things?
Well, I did. I mean, I said, losing patients to the PI thinks they're going to lose patients, and
Okay.
then us feeling like the other site's going to steal our study, and
Yeah, that's
we're-
asinine. To me, that's
that's
dumb.
just
That's really dumb.
crazy.
I
But
never
all of
had
this
that.
is kind of like a dance. It's kind of like dating.
I've never had that mentality of like even when I was in California, Southern California, like you could throw a rock, there's another clinic on the next
Yeah.
street. Even there we'd be sharing study leads with each other because I know, okay, if I share with you, you're gonna share with me. Rod and I share leads a lot, actually. Rod is like one of my main dudes. I share leads with Rod, Brad. Robert, what I was gonna ask you, my last question, because I'm actually interested in this. ClinicalTrials.gov is for patients. Like your email is there because patients, in theory, if they're interested, they're asking you questions, and then you would refer them to the site near them, right?
Right.
What's the ratio of site directors or owners to patients that email you?
Oh boy. I mean,
It ought to be
95.
the other way around, but
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah, exactly. It's 95% site owners, directors, and 5% patients.
So you do have patients from time to time.
Yeah, we do. And it's funny because I got a referral, and I sent it directly to, our partners at the CRO, and
Mm.
they have like, SOPs in place where they can't reach out because there's PHI there and there's direct information because, they just can't directly. So they have to funnel it through me. And then I have to connect them with the particular site that's closest to their home. So that's the reason why I don't want to remove and put some generic email box, because if you look, there's a lot
That's
of
what Pfizer does. Pfizer, Eli Lilly, they all put generic.
Really,
and then even the small biotech studies that are new coming to you, they even have generic
I've seen it.
email addresses, and that's a tremendous disservice to the patients. I just don't want to do that because I've been successful in having real legitimate patients reach out, who, whether, then there's the argument, oh, these are professional patients. Who knows how to use ClinicalTrials.gov? You got to have a course in that alone, right?
Yeah.
But whatever the case may be, they've reached out and they're legitimately interested. They have this condition, and they're truly seeking help. And I think that's the whole intention of it. But there's people commenting on my post that, oh, it's like, so go tell somebody not to advertise on social media. That's just things are going to happen. And I get it. I just think I'm trying to go back to the roots here. But now I also have a better understanding of things that Rod mentioned and you mentioned, Dan, right? Where else do you guys go as an organization? And maybe this is something that has to be, discussed more, right? There needs to be more collaboration between sites. But then Dan and Rod, I'll have one question for you.
Yeah.
What if some random site comes to you and says, hey, Rod, I'm so-and-so from this place, got any leads for me? And they're a brand new site. Are you so
No.
quick to jump and help them and put your reputation on the line because now your company is associated with this particular site? And
Yeah.
so do you see what I'm saying? Like,
The
how
answer
quick
is no,
okay.
I wouldn't.
Well, it's no for Dan. How about for Rod?
I
The
think
answer is
Dan and
probably
I
also
do
no.
a lot, but we try to figure out who they are and where they're from and what they've been doing before we do that. Yes, we're pretty particular on who we share with, but we don't turn them right off the bat, turn them away necessarily. We try to figure out who they are and
Yeah.
what,
But see,
what
so
kind of fact they are.
that proves the point that I'm trying to make here. That vetting, it's the same type of vetting you're doing on your end that I'm
Yeah.
trying to do on my end. And so there's still a barrier to entry.
We actually
Whether-
created a
we
service
connected.
for that. We
Yeah.
created a service for that where we'll charge like a monthly fee. It's $1,300 a month, month to month to help sites in those situations. But once there's someone like Rod or Brad, somebody that I know, Robert, like I actually can't remember, but I'm almost 100% sure I either gave Rod your email or vice versa.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure which study it was.
Yeah.
So I
But
have to go back and look. I'm going to go back and look now, obviously.
but Robert's absolutely right, because I'm not like Rod or Brad or somebody else that I've worked with in the past. I know they're not going to drop the ball for me. I mean, they're going to be a good site. Like at minimum, they're going to be a good site and not cause problems for Robert. I don't know if they're going to enroll or not, but they're at least not going to drop the ball for Robert and make me look bad. All right. But if it's Joe Schmo that I never heard of, like, no, we can't. We have a service for you. Watch this video on how to use ClinicalTrials.gov. Like I send them to this stuff. Like,
Yeah.
go send these emails. Now I'm going to send them this interview.
And I send them to Dan's videos a lot too,
Yeah.
or to follow Dan.
Because there's a good, not to sound entitled when you send emails, but there's a good practice of daily looking at ClinicalTrials.gov when you don't have studies, learning what you can about that study, emailing or connecting on LinkedIn with the study directors or people in charge, and trying to position yourself to get that study. It's actually a good habit when you're a new site to do this.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like dating for the site and for the sponsor, except we don't have a good place to go to meet.
We need a Tinder for clinical research, though.
Yeah.
There you go.
Swipe right.
Exactly.
All right. Well, that's it, guys. I mean, unless you guys have anything else to add. Robert, it was a good topic, man.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. And I'm already seeing some emails come into my work email that people are seeing my post on LinkedIn. And this is not directed towards any organization.
What was that?
So I just want to make that clear that this is not directed towards any particular organization. And also, my opinions are strictly those of my own, and these have nothing to do with who I'm employed by. But these are just friendly tips. I want to see everybody successful. Again, I think like Dan mentioned, we all have a common goal: patient centricity. We're here for them. We all want to bring, new therapies to market for those who need them. Cliche, but true. And I just think there's a good, better, and best way of conducting business. And I think it's important to recognize the barriers to entry at, from site to site, from sponsor to site, from CRO to sponsor. There's just a lot of different things. It's just not, there's a lot of, nuances involved in really, getting that study awarded to you. It's not just reaching out and sending it, because there's just a lot of different steps to be taken before you take that road. But I think there's work to be done.
Well, we'll definitely do more of these, and everybody like, subscribe, comment, share. Everybody go follow Robert right now. Go follow Rod right now, and let us know what you think about all this. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.